This program is brought to you by Be Big Premium and Protect Plus Gold. Sama-sama sa laban, walang iwanan. SMC Infrastructure, building a better world.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. On tonight's headlines. President Trump suggests global warming will reverse itself and dismisses climate change as a cause of ferocious fires now engulfing swaths of the U.S. West during a briefing in California on the deadly blazes. President Duterte said he won't pay reservation fee for COVID-19 vaccines because it's against the law. Australia records 0 new coronavirus deaths for the first time in 2 months. And the atmosphere of Venus contains a gas that on Earth can be attributed to living organisms, according to scientists, a discovery the head of NASA calls the most significant development yet in the hunt for extraterrestrial life. Wildfires are threatening more of the U.S. West Coast as dry, windy conditions return in some places. So far, at least 35 people have died and thousands have been forced to flee, with some trees still smoldering on Lee Samuelson's property after the passage of the Beachy Creek fire. The tree farmer lost 200 acres of his land in northern Oregon. Fires of this scale are rare in this part of the North Pacific state, but some farmers like Carrie Fernier blame it on poor forest management rather than climate change, echoing President Trump's earlier comments. Take a look.
In fact, there are still fires burning in the timberland up there, the taller trees you can see. So this is all, you can see the forest, the firefighting crews have been cutting trees down here, so they basically... And it was burning at the back, and it was creeping its way down. We gave up trying to catch the cows, couldn't find them in the smoke. On, I guess it'd be Tuesday night, probably about 6 o'clock when we went and looked at our cameras, when we went and got them, it had already raced that far. So within that day, it came all the way across our property. So, and it's not at all. We hear a lot of them in Eastern Oregon and the Bend area, Central Oregon, a lot of fires, but and we have a neighbor that lives up around the corner, and she's 90, and she's lived her whole life, has never had a forest fire here, so.
What?
Yeah, I don't know about the climate part. I mean, there could be something to that, you know, maybe long term, but our weather here is so cyclical. You know, we'll have record rains for the winter, and we'll have mild summers. We just happen to be unlucky, I think, with the weather this time. So.
Because this fire line that goes through Shelburne Falls literally butts up right up to my parents' and my grandmother's farm that they've had, and it stops.
What do you think?
I think a lot of this has to do with forestry management, with this fire starting up on the Brighton Bush and above Detroit, and the quickness it moved just proves that without proper forestry management within the national forest and the state forest, this is going to happen again. Maybe not here.
Much of the West Coast remained coated in dense smog on Monday, U.S. time, with Portland the world's most air-polluted city, according to IQ Air. The blazes across California, Oregon, and Washington state have burned more than 5 million acres, torching an area roughly the size of the state of New Jersey, with fears the death toll may rise. Meanwhile, the wildfires exposed starkly 2 opposing views from the Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. In California, President Trump arrived to assess the sweeping disaster there. President Trump, who flew into Sacramento on the 3rd day of a re-election campaign swing, pushed back against state officials, arguing that a heating climate underlies the ever stronger blazes, which have killed at least 35 people since the start of summer. But California Governor Gavin Newsom, who has argued that the fires are driven mostly by global warming, acknowledged as he met with Trump that better forest management was needed. But he also said the overwhelming cause of the problem is far bigger. Take a look.
We obviously feel very strongly that the hots are getting hotter, the dries are getting drier. When we're having heat domes, the likes of which we've never seen in our history, the hottest August ever in the history of the state, the ferocity of these fires, the drought, 5+ years, losing 163 million trees to that drought. Something's happened to the plumbing of the world. And we come from a perspective, humbly, where we submit the science is, in and observed evidence is self-evident, that climate change is real, and that is exacerbating this.
And we're seeing this warming trend make our summers warmer, but also our winters warmer as well. So I think one area of mutual agreement and priority is vegetation management. But I think we want to work with you to really recognize the changing climate and what it means to our forests, and actually work together with that science. That science is going to be key, because if we ignore that science and sort of put our head in the sand and think it's all about vegetation management, we're not going to succeed together protecting Californians.
Okay, it'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Well, I don't think science knows, actually. Tom, please.
Mr. President.
Now, minutes earlier, Democratic challenger Joe Biden assailed President Trump as a climate arsonist whose re-election would be catastrophic for the environment. Let's listen in.
Give a climate arsonist 4 more years in the White House, why would anyone be surprised if we have more America ablaze? If you give a climate denier 4 more years in the White House, why would anyone be surprised when more of America is underwater? We need a president who respects science, who understands that the damage from climate change is already here. Unless we take urgent action, it will soon be more catastrophic. A president who recognizes, understands, and cares that Americans are dying, which makes President Trump's climate denialism, his disdain for science and facts, all the more unconscionable.
California alone has seen 3.3 million acres burn, an annual record, or 5 million acres burn now, with more than 3 months of the fire season still to come and over 4,100 structures destroyed. More than 30,000 firefighters are battling the blazes, with officials warning that improved weather could end Monday as windier conditions return. Now, if a tree falls in the forest, will only Donald Trump hear it explode? The U.S. president once mocked for asserting that California's devastating wildfires may be caused by a lack of raking the forest floors. On Monday, waded again into the debate over the wildfires ravaging swathes of the western U.S. Take a look.
What would you like to see specifically done on the issue of forest management? And is it possible that it's also forest management and climate change? It's both things at the same time.
I think something's possible. I think a lot of things are possible. But with regard to the forests, when trees fall down after a short period of time, about 18 months, they become very dry. They become really like a matchstick. And they get up, you know, there's no more water pouring through. And they become very, very, they just explode. They can explode. Leaves. When you have years of leaves, dried leaves on the ground, it just sets it up. It's really a fuel for a fire. So they have to do something about it. They also have to do cuts. I mean, people don't like to do cuts, but they have to do cuts in between. So if you do have a fire and it gets away, you'll have a 50-yard cut in between. So it won't be able to catch to the other side. They don't do that. An incredible job. This is one of the biggest burns we've ever seen. And we have to do a lot about forest management. Obviously, forest management in California is very important.
Now, his comments elicited widespread bewilderment and scorn on social media, with people speculating that the president may have misunderstood briefings about the effects of fire on trees, many which have died due to drought that weakens their defenses against pests. Now, some live trees, like Australia's eucalyptus, have been reported to have exploded at times by firefighters. As the sap superheats and expands, while freezing trees have been reported to let off sounds like gunshots as the sap freezes and snaps off limbs. Hurricane Sally is churning slowly towards the coast of the southern U.S. states of Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi on Monday U.S. time as it intensified into a Category 2 storm. The National Hurricane Center said the storm in the Gulf of Mexico was packing maximum sustained winds of around 100 miles per hour. At 2100 GMT, it was located 145 miles southeast of Biloxi, Mississippi, and heading in a west-northwesterly direction at 6 miles per hour. Now, it was expected to make landfall late Tuesday or early Wednesday. Governor John Bel Edwards of Louisiana, which is still recovering from Hurricane Laura, which made landfall as a Category 4 storm, told residents to be prepared. Sally is one of 5 active tropical cyclones in the Atlantic Ocean. The others are Hurricane Paulette, Tropical Storm Steady and Vicky, and Tropical Depression Rene. According to meteorologists, the only other time there were 5 active tropical cyclones in the Atlantic at the same time was in September 1971. Hurricane Paulette, a Category 2 storm, pounded the island of Bermuda on Monday with strong winds and heavy rains, according to the National Hurricane Center. Now, there's new evidence that the Arctic is rapidly heating. Scientists said a massive chunk of ice larger than the city of Paris has broken off from the Arctic's largest ice shelf because of warmer temperatures in Greenland. The 113 square kilometer block broke off in the northeast Greenland, which the scientists said had been expected given the rising average temperatures. Geological Survey of Denmark and Greenland, or GEUs, also published satellite images showing the portions of the glacier that had broken off. When it is normal for pieces of ice to break off from a glacier, a process called calving, they are generally not this large. According to GEU, since 1999, the glacier has lost 160 square kilometers of ice, an area twice the size of Manhattan, with the loss rate accelerating in the past 2 years. And the smell of burnt vegetation, the red glow of flames welcome visitors these days to the Pantanal, the world's biggest tropical wetlands, a biodiverse paradise that is now partly reduced to ashes by record wildfires. Take a look.
Da empresa lá, a gente tá pagando, tentando apagar, né? Mas não está conseguindo, infelizmente, vento muito seco, umidade baixa, tá difícil. E eu conversei com os bombeiros, ele falou, todo mundo foi unânime falar que foi o pior incêndio que eles já enfrentaram na vida deles.
The Pantanal sits at the southern edge of the Amazon rainforest, stretching from Brazil into Bolivia and Paraguay. In normal times, it draws tourists from around the world with its lush landscapes and wildlife, including jaguars, jabiru storks, giant otters, caimans, toucans, macaws, and monkeys. The scenes in the Pantanal are reminiscent of the wildfires devastating the U.S. West Coast. As with those fires, there is a complex web of factors driving the blazes. The main cause in the Pantanal, though, is drought. Now, with temperatures reaching 34 degrees Celsius in Paris today, the banks of the River Seine are bustling with locals and tourists enjoying the late summer sunshine. As France enters autumn, exceptionally high temperatures are expected across the country. Meteo France attributes the warm weather to a lingering anti-cyclonic weather condition. The government continues to enforce distancing measures to limit the spread of the coronavirus. An experimental greenhousing project in a Chinese megacity promised prospective residents life in a vertical forest with manicured gardens on every balcony. All 826 apartments were sold out by April this year, according to the project's estate agent. But instead of a modern eco-paradise, the towers look like the set of a desolate post-apocalyptic film. Take a look. The problem, the mosquitoes love the plants too. Only a handful of families have moved into Chengdu's Kia City Forest Garden because of an infestation, according to state media. Now, the project in the southwestern city was built in 2018 with every private balcony designed to provide space for plants to grow, according to local media. Without any tenants to care for them, the 8 towers have been overrun by their own plants and invaded by mosquitoes. Plants have almost entirely swallowed up some neglected balconies, with branches hanging over railings all over the towers, according to this footage. But some residents appear to have braved the mosquitoes. A handful of balconies had pruned plants and outdoor furniture and lights turned on inside the apartments. Only about 10 families have moved in, according to the state-run Global Times newspaper. Eagle News will be right back.
To date, SMC infrastructure remains at the forefront of Boracay Airport's modernization. The current and long-term developments include the construction of an international airport passenger terminal and the extension of the existing runway to better serve bigger aircrafts, providing tourists with world-class access to this slice of paradise.
The New Era University, in its 45th year of excellence, discipline, and service to humanity, will offer online education at all levels beginning this first semester, academic year 2020 to 2021, through the NEU Virtual Learning Environment, or NEU VLE. New Era University offers a complete basic education cycle from kindergarten up to senior high school, offering all strands. NEU has 18 colleges, and 2 graduate schools. It also offers ALS and ETF. Best of all, NEU has the most affordable tuition fees among private universities in the Philippines. NEU is at Quezon City, the city of San Fernando, Pampanga, General Santos City, South Cotabato, Lipa City, Batangas, and Pinugay, Baras, Rizal. New Era University is under the stewardship of Dr. Dilo L. Rosas. What are you waiting for? Be part of the new normal. Enroll now. Classes start on October 5, 2020.
Cases of COVID-19 top 29 million globally as the pandemic persists. That includes 269,407 in the Philippines, with 4,663 deaths, according to Johns Hopkins University. Here in the Philippines, President Duterte said he won't pay any reservation fee for COVID-19 vaccine because it's against the law. Take a look.
Would listen to us. The one good thing about China is you do not have to beg. You do not have to plead. Like in other countries, they want cash advance bago tayo deliveran ng vaccine. Eh kung ganon, patay tayong lahat. Every Filipino will die. I can assure you. Why? Kung wala tayong ibigay sa kanila as advance, di walang vaccine. Di walang vaccine, di maghalika na lang tayo lahat para mas madali. That's I said one thing wrong with itong Western companies. Kaya sabi ko, we will give preference to Russia and China, provided that their vaccine is as good as any other in the market. It could be as good as yung mga kumpanya sinabi nila, hindi ko sasabihin, baka na magpapa-advertise sila. That's one thing wrong about the Western countries. It's all profit, profit, profit. Imagine there's a pandemic, and you say that, okay, we have something for sale or something to sell to you, and marinig mo, maligaya ka, only to collapse when the next sentence is said, pero magbayad kayo ng cash advance bago kami magpada. Hindi pa nga eh. Nagkamali ako. Wala pa. Now, they are asking for parang reservation fee. Wala pa sila. Sabi nila, pag na-imbento na ito, natapos na namin yung trials. But anyway, they're really on the advanced stage of the clinical trials. Pero kung sabihin mo na, sige, wala pa yung vaccine, there is nothing with finality, and you want us to make a reservation by depositing money, you must be crazy. Hindi ako bakit ako magbili ng ganong style? Because the procurement law of the Philippines, this country, does not allow you to buy something which is non-existent or to be produced as yet. So yan ang, bakit ka naman magbayad na wala dyan? So, talagang, if the companies are here, are representatives, mag-uwi na kayo sa inyo. So actually, at the end of the day, what happens is that they want you to finance the research and the perfection of the vaccine.
In other news, China has locked down a city on the border with Myanmar and will launch a mass coronavirus testing program, according to officials, after a handful of infections were detected there. Now, the 3 cases were found in the city of Ruli in western Yunnan province, a major land border crossing point with neighboring Myanmar. City officials said in a statement on Tuesday that residents were being told to stay home and people had been forbidden from entering or leaving the city from Monday evening. They said every resident would be tested for the virus in Ruli, which is home to more than 210,000 people. Businesses have been closed except for supermarkets, pharmacies, and food markets. The officials said the infections were brought in from Myanmar, and Chinese authorities would crack down on illegal immigrants. Ruli is separated by a shallow river from the border town of Mus, Myanmar's main gateway to China, known for sleazy streets, weapons, casinos, and drugs. Meanwhile, opposition parties in Myanmar are calling for November's election to be postponed as the country scrambles to control a coronavirus surge. New infections are doubling every week, albeit from a relatively low base, and hospitals in the biggest city, Yangon, are overwhelmed in a nation with one of the world's poorest healthcare systems. The sharp jump comes as Myanmar prepares to hold national elections on November 8, with leader Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy, or NLD, widely expected to be returned to power. But calls are growing for the polls to be delayed. Australia recorded 0 new coronavirus deaths for the first time in 2 months on Tuesday as a slowdown in new cases allowed a crippling lockdown in its second biggest city to be eased. Just 50 fresh virus cases were reported nationwide, down from peaks above 700 in late July and early August, while no fatalities were registered for the first time since July 13, according to an AFP tally. Now, the news came a day after a strict lockdown of Melbourne was loosened, allowing residents to spend an extra hour a day exercising outside and visiting friends living alone. In surrounding Victoria State, locals will be able to leave their homes and businesses can reopen from midnight Wednesday after rural case numbers dipped. Melbourne residents still face restrictions, with non-essential businesses remaining closed and an overnight curfew in place until October 26. Almost 3/4 of Australia's almost 27,000 cases and 90% of the 816 coronavirus deaths have occurred in Victoria State. Hundreds died in aged care homes as the virus swept through facilities, infecting thousands of residents and staff. Now, they disinfect critical areas, they collect infectious materials, wash thousands of sheets and coats. They are the cleaning crews inside Mexican hospitals who risk their lives every day to keep health centers clean, knowing that their efforts will often go unnoticed. Take a look.
Yo creo que el temor existe a diario. El temor es algo que no se termina. Pero digo, aquí tratamos de protegernos entre nosotros mismos día a día.
Tiene más desechables, más cubrebocas, más batas.
The death toll from an outbreak in southern Spain of West Nile virus, which is spread by mosquitoes, has risen to 4, according to local health authorities. An 87-year-old woman who was hospitalized with the disease in the town of Puerto Real in the southwestern province of Cadiz is the latest fatal victim of the outbreak, according to the health department of the regional government of Andalusia in a statement. 3 other elderly people have died from the disease in the neighboring province of Seville, where the outbreak began earlier this year, in the towns of Correa del Rio and La Puebla del Rio, both located next to the Guadalquivir marshes. 10 other people are in hospital with the disease in the 2 provinces, including 4 who are in intensive care units, according to the statement. West Nile virus can cause symptoms similar to those of the flu, but in extreme cases, it can result in tremors, fever, comas, and a lethal swelling of the brain tissue known as encephalitis. It can also cause meningitis. First discovered in Uganda in 1937, the virus is carried by birds and spread to humans by mosquitoes. It's indigenous to Africa, Asia, Europe, and Australia. Now, due to the pandemic, many huge cruise liners, usually packed with tourists, have now turned into ghost ships that can be seen off the southern coast of England. Paul Derham, who runs a ferry company in Dorset, has started offering unusual tours of these vessels, attracting many curious visitors. Take a look.
Well, we came out of stage 2, which is quite hard to remember when that was, but it was early June, and we weren't carrying many passengers on our ferry route from Muddyford Quay to Muddyford Beach. So I just made a broadcast one day. Anybody want to go and see the cruise liners out there, those ships? And I was surprised. So many hands went up. I thought, oh, we might be able to do something here. So we advertised it, and we put on 4 trips.
We live locally, and we've seen this advertised, and we just thought, oh, that sounds really fun, and I thought we'd better get it in before Boris locks us down.
I've done 6 of these trips to see the cruise ships, because they're quite often different cruise ships out, and I do love looking at them. I'm a regular cruiser, so it's fun to look at the ships when they're here.
Tonnage, this one's 225, and you might as well say those lifeboats there are almost the same size as the Josephine you're on today. Didn't see anybody to wave at at all? No. Vessel, that's to say every passenger cabin.
In other news, Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny said he was able to breathe unaided in his first public comments after his alleged poisoning in Siberia last month. Take a look. Hello, this is Navalny, he said in a post on Instagram, appearing with his wife Yulia and 2 children in the Berlin hospital where he was flown for treatment after falling ill. The 44-year-old lawyer and outspoken Kremlin critic fell ill on a flight from the Siberian city of Tomsk to Moscow after a trip to support opposition candidates in local elections. Germany said Monday that French and Swedish labs had independently confirmed findings by doctors in Berlin that Navalny was poisoned with a Novichok nerve agent. Navalny's allies say the use of the banned chemical weapon means that only the Russian state could be responsible. Russia has angrily dismissed the findings, saying its doctors found no trace of poison. Jakarta has protested against the intrusion of a Chinese Coast Guard ship into the Southeast Asian archipelago's waters, according to the Indonesia's Foreign Ministry on Monday. Now, the Chinese vessel, identified as CCG 5204, was seen on Saturday in North Natuna waters, Indonesia's exclusive economic zone near the Riau Islands province. Spokesman Taiku Faiza said following the issue, the ministry on Sunday communicated with Chinese representative in Jakarta. The Indonesian Maritime Security Agency said the ship insisted it had been patrolling China's so-called 9-dash line, an area claimed by Beijing but contested by its neighbors. The Maritime Security Agency said the ship left the area on Monday. Indonesia rejects China's 9-dash line claim, saying it contravenes the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Indonesia, the world's largest archipelago nation, is trying to stop foreign vessels fishing in its waters, saying it costs the economy billions of dollars annually. Jakarta claims the area in the southern reaches of the South China Sea as its exclusive economic zone. In other news, high-profile Hong Kong pro-democracy campaigners ranging from Joshua Wong to media mogul Jimmy Lai arrived at the West Kowloon Magistrates Courts with 24 others charged with either participating in or inciting others to take part in an unlawful assembly. They had appeared at band vigil to mark the Tiananmen Square crackdown. Let's listen in.
And participation, and 26 of us altogether, all being prosecuted as participation in unauthorized assembly. We insist that condemning the Tiananmen massacre every year with a candlelight is no crime. We insist that we have the constitutional right to express ourselves against the Tiananmen massacre and to commemorate those who sacrificed. And for the Hong Kong Alliance, we will continue the struggle. We have been holding candlelight vigil for 30 years, 31 years, and we will continue. No matter, even with the national security law now imposed on Hong Kong, we will still continue next year for our candlelight vigil. And also, we are also concerned about the human rights situation in China. You know, with the coming October 1st National Day and also the Mid-Autumn Festival, we hope that all dissidents, all people being suppressed by the Chinese judicial system will be liberated will be released, especially with...
Tens of thousands of Hong Kongers defied the ban on rallies on June 4 to mark the anniversary of Beijing's deadly suppression of students pushing for democracy. The annual vigil has been held in Hong Kong for the last 3 decades and usually attracts huge crowds. But this year's gathering was banned for the first time, with authorities citing coronavirus measures, even though local transmission had largely been halted. In late June, Beijing imposed a sweeping national security law aimed at stamping out the demonstrations once and for all. The legislation targets subversion, secession, terrorism, and foreign collusion, with sentences including life in prison. Chilean police on Saturday said that more than 100 people were arrested after clashes marking the 47th anniversary of the coup d'etat that overthrew the leftist government of Salvador Allende. 16 police officers and 2 civilians were wounded in the clashes that erupted after ceremonies commemorating Allende, who died in the coup that ushered in 17 years of military rule under General Augusto Pinochet. Police General Ricardo Yanez said 3 police barracks had come under attack. His forces had been targeted by several attacks with incendiary devices, and vehicles had been torched. The date is marked annually by violent incidents between protesters and police, with residents in some neighborhoods erecting barricades. To Japan now, Yoshihide Suga, the new president of Japan's ruling parties, speaks at a press conference after his election victory. He said, quote, "I am confident that I have the environment to push through my policies in a stable manner." Let's listen in.
そうした派閥の皆さんの弊害ということは私は全くない。ただ政策を説明をさせていただいて、大きな数を今日いただきましたんで、安定して自分の目指す政治を行っていける、そういう環境は整ってきたのではないかなというふうに思います。特別の条件というよりも先生方の見方がもう完全に下火になってきたと、そういうことでなければそこはなかなか難しいのではないかなというふうに思っています。せっかく総理大臣に総裁に就任したわけですから、仕事をしたいなというふうに思ってますので、収束も徹底して行っていきたいと思いますし、そうした中でこの解散の時期というのはいずれにしろ1年しかないわけですから、なかなか悩ましい問題だろうなというふうに思います。
Mr. Suga easily won the vote, taking 377 of the 534 valid votes cast by Liberal Democratic Party lawmakers and regional representatives, significantly ahead of his 2 rivals. Given his party's legislative majority, he is expected to handily win a parliamentary vote on Wednesday and become Prime Minister, succeeding Prime Minister Abe, who is resigning for health reasons. Now, indeed, Japan's ruling party on Monday elected Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga as its new leader, making him all but certain to replace Prime Minister Shinzo Abe as the country's next leader. Suga is a fairly colorless politician who is expected to continue Abe's policies until the next election. That is according to Yong Wook Ryu, an assistant professor at the National University of Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. Let's listen in.
So he's a fairly colorless politician, and as such, it's been easy for him to gather support from different factions within the LDP. So most people expect Suga will carry Abe's policy continuously rather than trying to cement his own political vision or preferences between now until next September. So my guess is that don't expect anything new under Suga, right? So he will continue what Abe tried to do before, meaning that the basic Japanese foreign policy will be based on strengthening U.S.-Japan security alliance. Japan will not try to damage its relations with China as much as it can, but it won't shy away from balancing against China, or if some controversial or sensitive political and security issues arise, Japan will take a hard line towards China. So, he has always been sort of a quiet, sort of loner within the LDP, who was able to get on with almost everybody, right? But without having his own political ambitions or having, really strong political colors. So if the LDP's popularity goes up and stays relatively high under his leadership, then I think the LDP will see him or try to utilize him, right, for the next general election. However, if the public, right, does not like him all that much, or the LDP's approval rating remains low, then they will try to re-energize the party, right, by selecting a new leader who can take the party in a different direction.
Back to the U.S., the Court of Appeals on Monday gave the green light for the Trump administration to expel hundreds of thousands of nationals from 4 countries who had been granted protected status for humanitarian reasons. In a 2-1 ruling, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said a federal court in San Francisco had erred when it issued an injunction protecting more than 300,000 immigrants from El Salvador, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Sudan from being deported from the U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has sought to end the temporary protected status, or TPS, granted to these people who have several 100,000 American children on the grounds that their countries, which were previously racked by unrest, were now safe. Monday's ruling will not result in the immediate deportation of TPS holders, the American Civil Liberties Union said, as the challengers have vowed to file an appeal. Eagle News will be right back.
Sa panahon na laganap ang mga sakit, katuwang nyo ang BMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Gawa sa state-of-the-art facilities ang BMEG Premium Feeds. Kaya ito ay safe, sanitized, and hygienic. Walang dalang sakit. Certified, malinis, sariwa, at sigurado. At para malinis ang paligid, gumamit ng Protect Plus Gold. Isang safe broad-spectrum disinfectant na pumapatay ng mga virus, bacteria, at fungi. BMEG Premium at Protect Plus Gold. Sama-sama sa laban, walang iwanan.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Britain's unemployment rate jumped above 4% in July on economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. According to official data showed on Tuesday, the rate grew to 4.1% in the 3 months to the end of July from 3.9% the previous quarter. The Office for National Statistics said in a statement the number of people claiming jobless benefits stood at 2.7 million in August, up almost 121% since March when Britain went into lockdown over the virus. It added that 695,000 workers have been removed from UK payroll since March. Analysts expect the situation to worsen in the coming months as the government in October ends its furlough scheme that has been paying the bulk of wages for around 10 million workers. Greg Kelly, a former aide to ex-Nissan chief Carlos Ghosn, pleaded not guilty to allegations of financial misconduct as his trial began in Tokyo. Ghosn is at large as an international fugitive after jumping bail and fleeing Japan for Lebanon last year, leaving Kelly the only person facing trial in the roller coaster saga. American Kelly pleaded not guilty to charges he conspired to underreport tens of millions of dollars in pay that Ghosn was allegedly promised after his retirement. The trial, expected to last around 10 months, centers around the question of whether Kelly and Nissan, between 2010 and 2018, illegally concealed payments of around 9.2 billion yen or $87 million at today's rates, promised to Ghosn on retirement. The U.S. government has received a bid from Oracle for TikTok's American operations after the video sharing app's parent ByteDance rejected a proposal from Microsoft. Take a look. Next, the atmosphere of Venus contains traces of phosphine gas, which on Earth can be attributed to living organisms, according to scientists, in a fresh insight into conditions on our nearest planetary neighbor. Take a look. Conditions on Venus are often described as hellish, with daytime temperatures hot enough to melt lead and an atmosphere comprised almost entirely of carbon dioxide. Now, a team of experts used telescopes in Hawaii and Chile's Atacama Desert to observe Venus' upper cloud deck, around 60 kilometers from the surface. Now, they detected traces of phosphine, a flammable gas that on Earth often occurs from the breakdown of organic matter. Now, writing in Nature Astronomy, the team stressed the presence of phosphine did not prove the presence of life on Venus. However, as the clouds swirling about its broiling surface are highly acidic and therefore destroy phosphine very quickly, the research did show that something was creating it anew. The researchers conducted several modeling calculations in a bid to explain the new phosphine production. Now, they concluded that their research provided evidence for anomalous and unexplained chemistry on Venus. Lead author Jane Greaves from Cardiff University School of Physics and Astronomy said that the presence of phosphine alone was not proof of life on Earth's next-door neighbor. And before we close, we leave you with a word of hope. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. See you again tomorrow evening. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.
This program was brought to you by Be Big Premium and Protect Plus Gold. Sama-sama sa laban, walang iwanan. SMC Infrastructure, building a better world.
Bilang head ng panel of judges, makakasa po kayong